APC asks Tribunal to dismiss 3 opposition parties' petitions against Tinubu's victory. The All Progressives Congress APC has asked the Presidential Election Petitions Court PEPs in Abuja to dismiss petitions filed by 3 opposition parties challenging the victory of its presidential candidate, Bola Tinubu, in the 25 February election. The APC urged the tribunal to discountenance the petitions in 3 separate responses filed at PEPC's secretariat Sunday night by Thomas Ojo, a member of the party's legal team led by Lateef Fagbemi in Abuja. The news agency of Nigeria NAN reports that the 3 political parties, Action Alliance AA, Allied People's Movement APM, and Action People's Party APHAD, in separate petitions, challenged the emergence of Mr. Tinubu as president-elect. AA, in the petition, sued the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC, APC, Mr. Tinubu, and Hamza al-Mustafa, its factional presidential candidate and former CSO, to late General Sani Abacha, APM, in its petition, joined INEC, APC, Mr. Tinubu, Kashim Shettima, and Kabir Masari, who stood as vice presidential placeholder during the primaries before he was substituted with Mr. Shettima. The AP sued Mr. Tinubu, APC, and INEC as first to third respondents respectively. In the suits, marked CUPEPS 01-023, CUPEPS 04-20-3, and CUPEPS 02-20-3, AA, and its presidential candidate, APM and AP, are respectively challenging the outcome of the presidential election on the grounds of alleged substantial non-compliance with the electoral laws as well as the INEC guidelines, while the AA claimed that its candidate, Solomon David Okonigbuan, was excluded from the presidential poll, based on which the election should be voided. The APM is contending that Mr. Tinubu was not qualified to contest the election on the grounds of the alleged double nomination of his vice presidential candidate. It is also questioning Tinubu's candidacy on the grounds of the substitution of the initial placeholder, Kabir Masari, with Mr. Shettima. On its parts, the AP claimed that Mr. Tinubu was, at the time of the election, not qualified to contest the poll by virtue of the provisions of Sections 131C and 142 of the Constitution and Section 35 of the Electoral Act, 2022. Responding, the APC faulted the claim by the AA that its presidential candidate was excluded from the election, arguing that its known candidate, Mr. al-Mustafa, participated in the election. It stated that contrary to AA's claim, Mr. Tinubu was duly elected and returned as the President-elect of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having won the majority of lawful votes cast in the said election devoid of corrupt practices or vices, and in substantial compliance with the provisions of Electoral Act 2022 as amended. It argued that the ground on which the AA brought its petition is not meritorious and facts in support of same are not availing to validate the petitioner's claims and or a purported right to present the instant petition. The APC added that Mr. Okonigbuan, listed as the second petitioner, is not the first petitioner's AA's validly nominated and sponsored candidate to contest the presidential elections held on February 25. APC also argued that as against the AA's claim, INEC listed as the first respondent did not unlawfully exclude Mr. Okonigbuan's name because he was never the lawfully nominated and sponsored candidate of the petitioner, which did not submit his name to INEC as its candidate for the election. It added that there is no evidence that the AA conducted a valid primary from which Mr. Okonigbuan emerged as a candidate, noting that Mr. al-Mustafa was the actual candidate of the AA, who was recognized by INEC. The APC stated that Mr. Okonigbuan was not nominated and sponsored by the AA as its candidate to contest the presidential elections, adding that the party was not and could not have been excluded from the election as it participated in the presidential election with the fourth respondent al-Mustafa as its candidate, who participated in the election and scored 14,542 votes. In its notice of preliminary objection, the APC questioned the competence of the petition, noting that it was based solely on pre-election issues. It said, for an election petition to be competent, it must complain against the return and/or election of the winner of the disputed election. The instant petition is neither challenging and/or questioning the election of the second and/or third respondent APC Tinubu. The petition as presently constituted amounts to a pre-election matter of nomination and sponsorship of candidate S. The crux of the petition being the nomination and sponsorship of the first petitioner's candidate is statute barred, having not been commenced within the mandatory 14 days provided for under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999. Issues of nomination, sponsorship and exclusion of candidates for an election are issues that precede the conduct of an election and are pre-election matters that cannot be raised of canvass before an election. Tribunal. Facts in support of the petition speak to intra-party issues, pre-election disputes and administrative actions of a neck triable by Federal High Court under Section 285 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as altered by the 4th Alteration Act and outside the original jurisdiction of the Court of Appeal, being a presidential election petition tribunal. Also in its reply, the APC prayed the tribunal to dismiss APM's petition. The party, in its preliminary objection equally filed on Sunday, argued that the petitioner APM alone in the absence of its sponsored candidate cannot benefit and did not have any special interest in the election or return of the third respondent Tinubu as the winner of the election. The APC queried the legal capacity of the party to challenging the mode it adopted in nominating its candidate. The APC argued that since the APM was not a member of the party, it did not know how it becomes the petitioner's business how it nominates its candidates. The petitioner does not fall under the category of persons that can challenge the internal working operation of the second respondent APC regarding the nomination and sponsorship of the second respondent's candidates for the election. The APC equally faulted the competence of the petition by the AP, arguing that the grounds on which it was founded is not sustainable. It described the petition as frivolous and an attempt to waste the court's time. NAN also reports that the presidential candidate of Labour Party LP, Peter Obi, and his People's Democratic Party PDP counterpart, Atiku Abubakar, are also challenging the election. Mr. Tinubu and Mr. Shettima, the vice president-elect, are, however, within time to respond to all the petitions. NAN reports that based on provisions of the law, a respondent has within 21 days to reply to a petition after a service. NAN.